Good evening, everyone, on a Sunday night. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, with our weekly call-in show. I love to do more than one per week, but we deliver the one per week for sure, and invite your comments, your questions, your debate topics. Leave those in the live chat. So again, your comments, your questions, I'll get to everything. Your debate topics, leave those in the live chat. And if you want to call me directly, of course, that's 860-325-3687, 860-325-3687. I hope the transmission's okay. Let me know in the live chat if the feed looks okay, if it sounds okay, looks okay, if everything's stable and pretty clear. So let me know in the live chat. And again, leave your comments and your questions and your topics there in the comments section. And again, it's 860-325-3687. I see three news items for today. Michigan has received a commit from a top 300 player. Linebacker Junior Colson committed to Michigan today, choosing Michigan over offers from Tennessee, Oregon, Ole Miss, and LSU, and others. Colson is the 184th player ranked overall, now the third highest ranked commit to Michigan. 6 foot 220 outside linebacker out of Tennessee. So again, Michigan gets a top linebacker, top 200 player overall in Junior Colson. So good news for the Wolverines on this Sunday, choosing Michigan over Ole Miss, LSU, Tennessee, and Oregon. And of course, Tennessee's been cleaning up in recruiting. But as soon as Michigan gets one big recruit, Ohio State counters with another big commit today. Ohio State has added ESPN 300 cornerback Denzel Burke, beefing up a recruiting class already ranked, of course, #1 in college football. And let's take a call. I'd like to remind everyone that we will be starting our team previews here this week. So look out for our team previews for 2020. And also in recent days, we've released our top 5 in the SEC at quarterback and running back, top 5 in the Pac-12 at quarterback and running back, and the Big Ten top 5 quarterbacks released this weekend. Hey, it's MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
What's up, Mark? It's DeAndre. How you doing, bro?
Hey, DeAndre. What's going on, man? Good to hear from you.
Good, man. Good, man. I'm enjoying this lovely 3-day weekend, and I hope you're doing well and staying safe.
Oh, yeah. Everything's good. Everything's good. What's on your mind tonight?
Oh, man. I like to say I love the videos on the national championships.
Yeah, those are fun to do.
Yeah, I'm sure you saw me put it on Twitter, but I was talking about, some Ohio State fans are like Clemson need to catch up, and, we got 8 championships. And I was joking around with them, like, y'all technically only have 2 legit championships, and some of them went off on me. And, like, I'm just saying, some of them, if you go throughout history, I think it was 1957, like, they have a national championship, and Auburn was undefeated, and the 1944 or 1942, whichever one it was, I was like, Wisconsin beat y'all and didn't even win the national championship. Y'all finished with the same record. And it was just joking around, but a lot of them take it too seriously, man.
Well, maybe we'll take out some of those seasons. Maybe I'll take aim at some of those seasons.
Oh, yeah, man, yeah. Hey, I'm not trying to be funny, and you are an Ohio State fan. Yep. Can you really tell me who played in 1944, 1942, or 1957? I mean, you don't know who was on those teams. Maybe 1957, but not 1942 and 1944.
Well,
I mean, some of these guys, they take it way too serious.
I can tell you a handful of players, but no. I'm not an expert on 1940s and 50s football. I have read Ohio State history and college football history. So if we ran down the starting lineups for those teams, I know a handful of guys.
Yeah. And like I was telling a guy that's a Michigan fan, the championships they won in 1908. Like some years they played 10 schools and nobody else played more than 4 or 5 schools. I'm like, you know, and I try to explain this as best as I can. The population was up north, so most of the big media outlets was up north. So, like that 1944 championship or 1942, whenever it was, it's like Tulsa finished undefeated. Tulsa wasn't around a big major area. You know, Detroit, Ohio State had Detroit, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh, where these media people might have saw them play and knew how good they were, but it's like, how do you really judge how good these championships really are? And that's why I like your videos, and I hope everybody go check them out. Like that Colorado, video. I mean, if Clemson would have beat Georgia Tech, which they lost to by 2 points, Clemson probably could have claimed part of the national championship because they beat Illinois 30 and Illinois beat Colorado that year. So, you know, all the championships you could pick apart and say who's the champion, should have been a champion and stuff like that. And hey, it's fun. And more people should talk about it instead of talking about, oh, you know, we have 8 national championships. Well, why you got 8 national championships?
Yeah, they're not like Super Bowls.
Yeah, so you know. Go ahead, Mark.
They're not like Super Bowls.
Hello?
Hey, DeAndre, can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I don't know if that's me or you, but yeah, I was just saying they're not like Super Bowls. When people stick their particular number up for their school and say, hey, we're Alabama, we've won 17 championships, or we're this or we're that, they're not like Super Bowls. It's not like it was a clear cut, okay, we've got a system in place, it's fair, we've got a schedule that makes sense, we've got a playoff system that makes sense, and the team that wins the Super Bowl, nobody's questioning that. Sometimes somebody may say, oh, well, you know, this other team was really the best team, but they blew a playoff game. You know, that comes up once in a while, but there's a clear understanding who the champions are in the NFL and in other sports. But this is just, these national championship numbers are so illegitimate. And I'm not trying to, so for example, I had a couple of Miami fans take shot at me for the 1983 video. And I was not saying that Miami did not earn that championship or they should not be considered. I'm not saying that Auburn was the national champion. I'm just saying that you could look at it a number of different ways, and there's certainly a fair argument to say that Auburn had the best season.
Yeah, and I remember I'm the one that brought that up to you, asked you the question. Yeah. And I looked at their schedule. Auburn played everybody. I mean, I only thing they lost to was Texas, and that was the beginning of the year. I mean, they beat Florida, who beat Miami. So, I mean, how do you judge who's the national champion when you have something like that? I mean, and that's what a lot of people don't get because they don't go back and look at it. Because I love history, I do go back and look at some of that stuff. Now, I might have some of the years and stuff, but you know, I think Miami won in '89, and you could have said somebody else could have been a national championship that year. So it happens. I mean, people say, well, what about Clemson in '81? Clemson was the only undefeated team in '81. Sure. But Texas was good that year. And so, you know, BYU, I mean, I don't know how they got the national championship, but, you know, they did that year. They probably, I don't know if they had the best team or not, but they beat Pitt that year. That's the only team I know they beat that was really, I don't think Pitt was that good that year. Well, you know what it was. I looked into that, DeAndre. So they beat Pitt in the opener, and they only beat them by like 3 or 4 points. That Pitt team was ranked number 3 in the country, and this is why we got to be careful with rankings too. That Pitt team at the time of the game was number 3 in the country preseason. Do you know what their final record was? That Pitt team. So this was the year after Marino's senior year at Pitt. This was 1984. Marino left in '83. Pitt, number 3 in the nation when BYU beat them.
Guess what their final record was?
5-6.
3-7-1.
3-7-1. Okay.
So that was their
Wow.
arguably the best team that they had a string of close calls. Now there's still wins, but I'm talking about against Wyoming and San Diego State and Hawaii. They're winning these games 41-38. And so then when they play a Michigan team that is the worst Michigan team going back to the 60s, from the 60s until Rich Rod was there in 2008, that was if you picked out the worst Michigan team from the mid-60s until 10 years ago, that would be the team that you would pick out that went 6-6. And they're playing BYU for BYU to earn a national championship. It's just crazy.
Right. Like one year I pointed out UCLA and Ohio State. It's like, why does it? You and the other guy on your Twitter, NC whatever, good guy, but he like he said, like UCLA finished undefeated that year, and Ohio State both finished undefeated that year, but they didn't play each other in the Rose Bowl because UCLA went to the Rose Bowl the year before. I'm like, some of this stuff is ridiculous, and we talk about it.
So both the Pac-10, well, it was the Pac-8 at the time, both the Pac-8/10 and the Big Ten had the same rule. They had two rules. So the first one was that you couldn't play in the Rose Bowl 2 consecutive years. So the next year, after playing in the Rose Bowl, you could be undefeated, and the second place team in the Big Ten could be 6-2, and you beat them 50-0, and they're going to go to the Rose Bowl. And back then, there wasn't another bowl to go to, so you would just not go to a bowl game. And then they switched it to, so it happened too many times with, as you can imagine, Ohio State and Michigan being the best teams, and especially Ohio State not getting to go back to the Rose Bowl and being by far the best team in the Big Ten. Then they switched it to, if there was a tie, well, they also had this rule in place, I should say it that way, that if two teams tied for the championships and they didn't play during the regular season, then the team that didn't go the most recent got to go. And I don't know how many Rose Bowls Ohio State missed out on. I know there was a year they tied Iowa, 1981. There was a year they tied Wisconsin, 1993. There were other years in which they tied for the Big Ten championship, but they didn't go to the Rose Bowl because they went more often than the other teams. So they didn't get to go. Just weird rules.
And that's what I'm saying. It's not uniform. So, I know, and I get what you say. I think our system is better than when we had it when people voted on it. And you had so many different polls. I think in 1984 there was a poll that voted Florida #1. So
yep.
So there were so many polls, and then I pointed out, even in the '60s, who was it? Arkansas and Texas. They voted Arkansas #1 in the nation before they even played the bowl game, and they lost the bowl game. And they already had given them the national championship.
Oh,
so, So the president was like, Arkansas the best team in the country that year, and everybody went along with it. Richard Nixon said it was the best team. So that's what I be trying to tell people, and they get mad and say, "Oh, Clemson." Does Clemson have the history of Ohio State? No, they do not. They absolutely do not. Y'all have more draft picks, more Heisman winners. I think the only thing Clemson can say is that they have a better bowl record than Ohio State. That's about the only thing they can say. But outside the fact that Clemson beat Ohio State 4 times, and since they played, but that's a very small pigment of the history of college football. 4 times, and then you're here. I heard an Ohio State fan say, "Well, Ohio State had black people playing, and Clemson didn't, so they would play in the 60s and 50s." You got to take that into account, and there's all types of stuff you can bring up, and we all got to look at it and take a chill pill and enjoy college football for what it is. I mean, they just get outrageous about it, and I can't wait for the season. Ohio State got an amazing recruiting class next year coming up. I mean, it looks like we might have college football on time because I think some of the big Southeast Conference schools go back on the 8th. The Pac-10 still struggling out there, so I cannot wait to see how this turns out. But I think we in for a good season. I think Clemson and Ohio State are the best two teams. I saw one thing said it was Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State. I don't remember number 3. But, I mean, it might be, but we'll see. And that's why we love this game so much. Because you really don't never know. I mean, LSU, everybody had Alabama going, and Tua got hurt and all this other stuff, and ended up being on Clemson and LSU ran away with it.
You know, it would be
I'm
fun.
going to enjoy this.
It would be fun, DeAndre, to see another team get in there and just kind of mix it up. You know,
I think Oregon might be that team, but
exactly.
Quarterback is.
Yeah, besides Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, or somebody else from the SEC, LSU, Georgia, or Oklahoma. Somebody else. And, yeah, Oregon, are they the best candidate? Most likely candidate? Probably. Maybe Penn State. Maybe Florida.
Yeah. Right. I mean, it is a lot. So we'll just hopefully, football is one of the most powerful organizations there is, and I guarantee you that we're gonna have it on time. My son, he turned 5 in September, and he was like, Dad, I'm gonna be able to play flag football this year because he missed out on Little League this spring. And I said, man, I'm hoping so. And he's like, he moping around the house throwing the football in the air, talking about he's gonna play. And it's just amazing that how powerful football is, and what they do and how much money. Because $4 billion is a lot of money. I know Vegas got to be hurting right now. So you know. But Mark, I'll give everybody else a chance to call, man. You have a good night, and I hope we have football and keep continuing to stay safe out there, man.
Well, DeAndre, we appreciate the Super Chat contribution, of course, and we'll let everyone know that you got your YouTube channel. And let people know where they can find you.
It's called Black, Gold, Orange, and Purple, and it stands for the Pittsburgh Steelers, who I've always been a fan of, Clemson Tigers, and East Carolina Pirates. Come check me out. I do a lot of I talk about a lot of good stuff, but you know, just come check me out. Black and Gold, BGOP. Just come check me out, people, and y'all enjoy the channel. You know. Right, y'all have a good day, and bring football back.
Yep, we're just about 100 days away, so hopefully we get there.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, DeAndre.
All right, have a good day, Mark. All
right. We did have a call in during our conversation with DeAndre, so please call back, 860-325-3687. I'll get to Gruen's comment in just a second. 860-325-3687. Second to get to the... Oh, we lost you. What happened there? I'm sorry. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Please call back, 860-325-3687. My phone's a little touchy and trying to get the speaker on. And that's all that was going on there. Kept hitting the screen would go blank, kept hitting the screen, so it would pop up to where I could activate the speaker function. Shop Amazon, use the link in the description section of any of the videos. Please. All right, Gruen's comment. So we will have a Miami football show coming up this Tuesday. Hey, it's MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Hello, it's Mark. Who's on the line? I'm sorry. So whomever's calling, your voice, and I get the speaker on, is extremely faint. So maybe if you could call back. Okay. Hey, MSU #1 fan. Thanks for calling. What's going on tonight?
Nothing wrong. I'm leaving her phone.
I'm going to ask everybody out there on the live chat if they can make out the audio on the phone call because I can't. But anyway, what's going on tonight?
Not much. I heard they're getting rid of the independent conference. Is that true?
Is what true?
They're getting rid of the independent conference.
An independent conference.
Yeah, they're getting rid of it, I think.
Okay.
What I hear.
If it's an independent conference, then it wouldn't be a conference because the members in the conference, if you're independent, that's exactly what that means. You're not in a conference.
And Notre Dame, BYU, and all them are in that conference.
They're not in a conference.
Right. I heard they're getting rid of that conference anyways.
Okay.
With Notre Dame.
#1 fan, we're going to have to let you go. You're just not able to be heard. So give us a call back if you'd like. Thanks. All right. Anybody watching us on Facebook Live? So this is a function we just provided just a couple weeks ago with our various live streams and also our call-in show. So if you want to take part in the live chat room, which I hear is the best in college football, then you have to jump on YouTube and join us there, and then you can take part in our live chat. And actually, there's something I need to catch up on here. You know what? We'll get to it. Unfortunately, yeah, I messed something up regarding the stream. Okay, Groom D says, hey, Mark, all that excitement from Buddy Canes Cam. For nothing, Canes losing all local recruits. Okay, Miami does have a roughly top 10 recruiting class right now based on commits. So understand that if Miami can recruit a top 10 class in the ACC, they're going to have the second or third ranked class in the conference. Right now, it'd be the third since North Carolina is tearing it up. So we've run the numbers, Gruen, in the past. And if you take all the 4- and 5-star recruits in South Florida, Miami can't get commitments and signings from all of them. There's too many. It's not even close. So they're going to lose commits because they don't have enough spots. Even if every player in South Florida, in the surrounding counties to Coral Gables, wanted to play at the U, there wouldn't be enough spots to sign them. There's not enough scholarships. There's that much talent in Florida and specifically in South Florida. All right, good to see everyone on the line. We're running down some college football news. Eric Rambo, good to see you, man. And we talked about Ohio State's commit as well as Michigan's. The Buckeye commit was cornerback Denzel Burke. So Burke is the number 262 ranked player. This is in the ESPN 300. He's in Scottsdale, Arizona, and was considering Colorado, Oregon, USC, and Washington. So everybody out west, but then Ohio State stunk in there and stole him away from the schools out west. So Ohio State with a good get there in getting a quarterback. And we talked about Michigan's top 300 commit that came in today. Also, we've got Ole Miss picking up a transfer from Mississippi State. So there's some bad blood there always. So it's interesting that a player would leave one of those rival teams and go right to the other one. So it's Mississippi State defensive back Jerrion Jones confirmed to ESPN that he's transferring to Ole Miss. He entered the transfer portal on Wednesday, so he made a quick decision, adding fuel to the fire. Of course, it's the Egg Bowl. It's an intense rivalry. It doesn't always hit the national scale because the level of winning at Mississippi State and Ole Miss, not what it is elsewhere. But talking about another top 300 prospect, top 200 in the 2019 class out of Northwest Rankin High School in Brandon, Mississippi. committed to Mississippi State. Also had a commitment and decommitment from Oklahoma. And again, he has chosen to leave Mississippi State and go to Ole Miss. Played in 11 games last year, true freshman, 12 total tackles, 2 pass breakups. So not an impact player last year as a freshman, but as a top 200 player in the nation, leaving Mississippi State, going to Ole Miss. A big deal for Lane Kiffin. All right, everyone. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We'll get the number on the line for you, 860-325-3687. As our first caller, DeAndre, pointed out to everyone, please check out the videos in which we are looking at, and I would love to do every season in history, because I believe that there is a legitimate debate basically every year. Every year. So a debate on who should have won the national championship, and in the BCS and playoff era, who should have been given an opportunity to play for a national championship. So check out those videos. We have looked at 1983, 84, and 1990. Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Oh my goodness, this phone is driving me nuts.
Start the call or choose to decline. The call will start at the beginning.
Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Hello?
Mark?
Yes.
Hi, Mark. This is actually, well, my name is Jeffrey, but I've been a regular commentator on your channel under the name of Yakov 22.
Oh, Yankov 22. Good to hear from you, man.
Yeah, well, I'm doing well. When I saw the number here, I figured I was not going to be speaking to you tonight. I thought you had so many calls. I was pleasantly surprised to find out that I made it through.
Well, we've got a few calls in order, but nothing crazy.
Oh, I mean, I'm sure you get many calls. I just didn't think I'd be one of them.
Well, I appreciate it. I, of course, see your comments all the time and appreciate the support. And you got some great insight. And so what do you got on your mind tonight?
Thank you. Well, actually, something I've been thinking about for a while that I wanted to run by you. As you probably know, I'm an Ohio State fan. I'm alone. I grew up in Ohio, went to Ohio State, but I've actually since relocated to South Carolina. And one of the things I wanted to ask you is there's a few programs I really think underperform based on their, we'll say, their city and their proximity to talent. And I wanted to share a few of them with you and to see if you might agree with me, and maybe they do their place. They probably should win a bit more than they do. The first one I wanted to ask you about is actually the ACC. And I always thought that being that they're in Atlanta, that Georgia Tech should consistently win more than they do. This is the 30th year anniversary of them actually winning a national championship, but they haven't really been consistently good since that time. And perhaps I could ask you if you think that due to where they are, they're in a great place where people can thrive there, both during school and after school for professional opportunities. There's certainly a tremendous amount of in-state talent there. Should Georgia Tech win more than they do?
Well, to be a little bit more accurate about even their 1990 championship, that was an aberration. And during that time, they weren't even that successful. If you looked between 1985 and 95, they weren't even, it's not like they were pumping out 10 and 11 win seasons and then they broke through and won a national championship. That was very much an aberration. So the Atlanta metro area produces more NFL talent than any metro area in the country. To back up your point there. I know that, so we used to have a Georgia Tech guy on a regular basis, Joey Weaver, and we discussed that often because I would make the same claims. I would say specifically in Atlanta and in the Deep South, and certainly in the state of Georgia, there's so much talent there. Why can't they reel in better recruiting classes? Because the recruiting classes at Georgia Tech, we're not talking about there being opportunity to have top 5 classes at Georgia Tech and they bring in top 20 classes. They bring in top 50 classes. Like they're not even
close.
they have some really mediocre recruiting classes. They have Boston College at times type recruiting classes, Kansas type recruiting classes. I got to think that more recently the style of play with Paul Johnson has caused a lot of quarterbacks and wide receivers to shun Georgia Tech, because who wants to go play in a triple option offense and throw the ball 8 times a game and kill your pro career if you're a quarterback or a wide receiver? So that's one issue that, of course, no longer exists, but it's going to take a while to gain some traction there. And I know that they have very stringent academic standards there as well. Those would be the two things that come to mind. But even that being the point, Stanford, Northwestern, those two schools in particular have been extremely strong at different times. And Georgia Tech really, Paul Johnson had a couple nice teams. He went to the Orange Bowl twice. But generally, when I think Georgia Tech, I think 7-5. So that's about what
I think the same.
So
Well,
was that the one school, or did you have any other ones?
Well, actually, if I had a little time here, I was going to share one or two from another conference here. And actually, obviously, I live here in South Carolina. And although Ohio State will always been my favorite team, I've sort of semi-adopted the University of South Carolina as a team of interest of mine. If Ohio State's not playing at that time slot, I'll try to watch the South Carolina game. And the reason I'm bringing them up is, I guess you could say something similar to Georgia Tech. They're a state that produces less talent than Georgia, but does have talent, and certainly have proximity to talent in Georgia and North Carolina, and not so far to Florida, really. I feel that, and Columbia is a great city. I guess you could say similar to, it's not an outpost type of college, which is nothing wrong with that, but I'm just saying there's more professional, more postgraduate opportunities to work in Columbia than there are in a college town, which, if you're not associated with the university, there's not so much to do there as far as needing a degree type of job. So I think the University of South Carolina, in my opinion, should be consistently battling for no worse than third in the SEC, in their part of the SEC, just behind Florida and Georgia, who do admittedly have more in-state talent and proximity to talent. Yet, rarely have they done that. They had a little streak there last year, a couple of years ago with the previous coach, the ball coach, but it's fallen off a bit, and they've never been able to consistently always be the third, no worse than the third best team in the SEC East. And perhaps I could get your insights into what I said about that.
Yeah, so I would think going way back, close to 30 years, that South Carolina would have suffered from not being a member of the SEC. So they joined the SEC in 1991 with Arkansas. Prior to that, they had independent status that, depending on how that was framed in recruiting, could have been to the advantage of certain schools like Notre Dame and Penn State. But there weren't very many success stories outside of those two as independents until Florida State and Miami started to take hold of Florida recruiting. And so they were independent status. Now, I am just conjecturing 30 years later as to whether that hurt, and there's some kind of ripple effect of them not gaining a stronghold as because once you have been established for decades as a marginal football school, well, then you don't have the advantage of having that name recognition and that brand that other teams in the SEC have. Also, Clemson's been the better program, and I'm not just talking about during its elite run of the last 5 years, but over time. Since, going back to the 40s and 50s, Clemson's been a better football program almost all the time than South Carolina. Even again, when Clemson was an elite, they were better and have a commanding, dominant lead in that series all time. other than those two semi-factors, I don't have an excuse for South Carolina. Steve Spurrier went there. What was interesting about his tenure was that he took over for Lou Holtz, who took an 0-11 team, if you can imagine that, at South Carolina. What was that, 1999? 2000, 1999. 0-11 team, and turned them into a pretty good team with Lou Holtz, and then he turned it over to Steve Spurrier, who went 7-5 forever there. And what was kind of odd was that he had a good defense during his tenure there, and the offense was pretty bad until late in his career, and then he ripped off 3 11-win seasons consecutively before it was turned back over to Will Muschamp. So, you know, I don't have a great excuse for South Carolina not being better as well. Those are the couple things that come to mind as being factors that you would think could have been erased by now, it being close to 30 years later.
And Mark, before I share my 13 one to share with you, I will also add this about South Carolina. I don't know if you've ever been to Columbia or been to a game there, but for a team that's never really had a consistently won, let's say, there's really a short list of schools that enjoy better community support than South Carolina. Columbia, and really the whole state, but Columbia in particular, which is our city, loves South Carolina. They have great fan support. The team, the players are loved in the community. It's a great facility there. There's few schools you would think that someone has to be more of a consistent winner to have the affection that that program enjoys. Yet they enjoy the affection of a team that seemingly should have won more than they do. So I might add that another reason, a bit more of an emotional reason, but another reason why to me they seem like a team that should win a bit more.
Well, I think there are a number of programs across the country that certainly have some semblance of a tradition, and they have resources, and they have a recruiting footprint that the difference is that they need to hire the right guy. Michigan State comes to mind, that they hadn't done anything for decades. And again, I'm going to point out that there were aberrations in there. There were years of winning a Rose Bowl in 1988, but those were clear aberrations. Basically, it was a 55% winning percentage program for decades, and then they got Mark D'Antonio, and suddenly he was able to figure things out and develop players more than anything, not recruit at that much of a higher level, but just better player development. And of course, Barry Alvarez turned Wisconsin into a power where they could never get players up there. And I think he did that from a number of standpoints. One was to strengthen the high school football play within Wisconsin, which of course South Carolina doesn't have that issue. But man, they need to go out and hire the next dynamic up-and-coming coach that is looking for an opportunity to awake what could be a sleeping giant. Yeah, I think South Carolina could win big. And Spurrier did 3 years in a row.
He had a good streak there where they won the SEC East. They beat Florida and Georgia. I went to one game. I actually went to a game where I saw them beat Florida.
What's
it was
interesting about
tremendous atmosphere there.
Is actually the year that they won the East was in 2010, and they got stomped by Cam Newton and Auburn in the SEC championship game. And that team wasn't even really that good. They lost 5 games, but they happened to win the Eastern Division. Then they later in 12, 13, and 14, were those the 3 years, or maybe 11, 12, and 13, went 11-2 3 consecutive years. But,
right. Yeah, I got a few years confused there, I think. But yeah, you're right. I confused up how they won the East. But yeah, that sounds about right there. Well, Mark, the 13 area I share with you before I know you have other people who are waiting, but there's another team I'm just kind of doing the conference. I couldn't really think of a Big Ten team I really thought should win. It's not as much, but I did think of another a Pac 12 team that I think should win more.
Okay. I wonder if it's
again, they're going to have a
I bring up all the time. We'll find out here.
Well, the team
I've
is
been talking
basically
about for years a program that I think should win a whole lot more in the Pac-12.
well, the team I'm going to say is similar as I said before because of where they're located, the proximity of talent, tremendous campus. All the stadiums a bit far away, and I'm going to go with UCLA with this.
Absolutely, that's the one. There's no excuse.
Mark, they have a great campus. I've been out there. I'm not really a West Coast type of guy, but the campus is beautiful. You don't have to, within 100 miles radius of the campus, there's enough talent to, you don't really get your crew out of that radius and still have a top 15 class every year, if not better. Yet they're a program that's, the bottom half of the Pac-12, and including a whole bunch of schools that don't have that type of proximity talent. So I'd love to hear what you have to say about them.
So I have stated many times on here similar points to what you just made, that I don't understand the excuse. They don't play in a difficult conference. Generally, the Pac-12 has been extremely good at times in pockets, but generally, and it's certainly right now, arguably the worst of the Power 5 conferences. They play in arguably the worst division in college football. And yeah, they are located in a place where they have prime recruiting, a prime recruiting base to draw from. They don't have to pull kids. They're not Nebraska. They don't have to pull them anywhere else. And even if they had to, you would think that they could pull them to UCLA, to Southern California. I've got no excuse for UCLA. I think they've made some poor coaching hires. I don't know why they, Jim Mora and Chip Kelly aside, they've been two guys that had reputations and built track records before they got to UCLA. They went on a run of coaching hires of guys that had accomplished nothing anywhere. And I mean as head coaches. They were assistant coaches, but Carl Durrell and Rick Neuheisel and Bob Toledo, those guys had accomplished nothing anywhere, and I didn't know why they couldn't have pulled in better coaches. So that's what went on from the early 90s until 6 or 8 years ago, was I thought they made bad coaching hires.
I guess that's the only reason they could think of it, because again, they have the resources to win.
Yeah, and I've asked Tony Siracusa from Last Word on College Football. He's a big UCLA guy. I've asked him the same question, and I'm not familiar with their facilities. I've been close to campus. I'm not familiar with their facilities, but he has mentioned that they're on par with the rest of the Pac-12, so that's not an issue. So, yeah, there's no excuse for UCLA.
Okay, well, I guess we've come up with 3 schools there that we're not quite sure that one particular. I think from when I hear your voice there, that one of the 3 I mentioned sounds like the one that is most perplexing to you.
South Carolina, UCLA, and who else did we talk about?
Well, Georgia Tech.
Oh, Georgia Tech, yes. Oh, well, UCLA is the most perplexing to me.
Yeah, by far, it seems.
South Carolina's got to deal with the SEC, for one thing. So if you look at South Carolina's recruiting classes, even when they've been down here, they're still pulling in, their recruiting classes jump around 18, 21, 16, 19. They're always in that 15 to 25 range, but that's always 12th or 13th in the conference. So just the sheer competition that they have to deal with. Just look at last year's South Carolina team that went 4-8. If you throw them in the Pac-12, I don't think they're going 4-8.
I think they could turn that around. Yeah.
So UCLA, I just think they have a tremendous opportunity to do something. I think they're a sleeping giant.
Well, maybe they're listening to your show right now, and they'll get on that.
That would be nice. That would be tremendous. And I thought, not that I'm a big Jim Mora fan or was guaranteed that he was going to do anything great there, but certainly I don't think the distinction is quite as much as it used to be, but there used to be a thought that college coaches struggled in the NFL, whereas NFL coaches would come to college and there was such a differentiation and sophistication of the game that NFL coaches were just far superior. And that Jim Mora, who had a successful run with the Atlanta Falcons, went to an NFC championship game, would be able to go to UCLA, have so much credibility that he would bring in, and he brought in top 15 recruiting classes, and he had one really nice season where they finished in the top 10, but he couldn't sustain success, and I was a bit surprised there.
Well, yeah, that's some good insights, Mark. I appreciate you allowing me to share a few thoughts here.
Absolutely. I appreciate the call.
As much as I'd love to keep talking, Mark, I know you have other people you want to talk to, and I'll give them the opportunity.
Good stuff. We thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for talking, Mark. Have a good evening.
Bye. So, yeah, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Interesting topic raised by our last caller, talking about, what programs are really underachieving when you take into consideration all the factors involved. And the easiest one to point to is recruiting footprint. That if you've got talent in your backyard and you're in a major conference, then what's wrong? What's going on? Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Nate.
Hey, Nate. How are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
I am doing great. What's going on?
So I was gonna ask a question about like the upcoming season. Like, do you think the fans will go to the stadiums like for the upcoming season?
I think we're going to see the same reflection of what we see in society right now. I've been out, I don't know how many places in the last, this weekend in particular, and I see all sorts of approaches to the current environment. I see people with masks, other people with no masks, people that try to go by social distancing guidelines, and others that are just reacting and going about their lives as they did before. And so the same approach is going to be at to a college football game. The difference is you can always sit home and watch college football. So are people going to come to the games? The answer is yes. Are other people not going to go to the games? The answer is yes. And the other answer would be that there are going to be fairly strict limitations to how many people can show up and where they're going to be able to sit and how many can enter the stadium at once. And probably a lot of other guidelines that I'm not thinking of and don't need to.
So it kind of like all depends, right?
Well, I don't think it depends. I think that's what it's going to be. Some people are going to go to the games. You're going to have your people that are going to go to the games, and they're going to act as if nothing happened. There's been no coronavirus, no issues. They're just going to the games. Don't think anything of it. Now, the guidelines in the stadium are going to force them to take certain measures. Then you're going to have other people that are going to think, okay, I'm going to take a measured risk here. I'm going to go to the game, but I'm going to social distance as much as possible. I'm going to bring hand sanitizer. I'm going to do all these things to protect myself and others. You're going to have those people. Then you're going to have people that are going to have to wait and see and want to get reports back from the stadium to see what's being done at the stadium before they're convinced that they could go to the games and should go to the games. then you're going to have other people that, regardless of what safety precautions are put in place, are going to say, I'm not going to a college football game this year, maybe not even next year, or maybe ever.
Okay. See, I wasn't sure about that, so that's why I wanted to ask. So my next question is I know you. I don't know if you reviewed the schedule. Do you review schedules for college football or no?
I went through the Big Ten and half of the SEC, and I wasn't quite getting the response in regards to views that was making it worth my while. So I didn't stop.
Okay, because I was going to ask about UAB if they will improve this season.
Do I think what?
UAB will improve the season.
UAB?
Yeah.
Yeah, I really can't speak knowledgeably about UAB football right now. They're not, with all respect to the Blazers, who have been, of course, Conference USA champs recently, all due respect to UAB, they're not at the top of my list in regards to making sure I'm up to date on the roster personnel and so forth.
Oh, okay. I get that because I get why they're not at the top 5 level yet. But I mean, they will. They might be will. They might. They can be if they succeed. You know. But I think that's all I have right now. But
okay, Nate. Thanks for calling.
You too.
Have a good night.
Have a good day. You too.
Okay, let's see. We got the number at 860-325-3687, 860-325-3687. What are you guys talking about in the live chat? Let me get there. I lost track. So again, we've got a decent player, at least a prospect, top 200 prospect from the 2019 class, leaving Mississippi State, going to Ole Miss. That was just announced today in the transfer portal. Defensive back there. Ohio State signs a defensive back, top 200 player. Michigan gets a top 200 player as well. Linebacker out of Tennessee. Bad Rose Bowl losses in the 70s. Yes, Ohio State, of course, they lost to Stanford, 1970 Rose Bowl. And when I say 70, that's the 70 season. Then they went in 72, 73, 74, 75, 4 consecutive Rose Bowls, and they lost 3. Beat USC by 3 touchdowns in the middle game in there. Had a blowout loss to USC. Also had a 1-point loss to USC on a 2-point conversion. And then the real disappointing, all those were disappointments, but very disappointing for the Ohio State program in 1976 as a consensus #1 team. Now, this goes to some coaching and game strategy here. A consensus #1 team that had trucked UCLA in the regular season by 3 touchdowns. Played UCLA again in the Rose Bowl and got beaten almost as badly as UCLA as the score was for Ohio State during the regular season. So a rematch in the Rose Bowl, Ohio State playing for everything. 11-0 team, #1 ranked, could have won a national championship in 1975, lost to UCLA. And then, of course, the final Ohio State effort in the 70s in the Rose Bowl was the 1979 season, 80 Rose Bowl. Charles White took it down the field in the final couple minutes, vaulted over the top for the game-winning touchdown, 17-16. Another Ohio State team that could have won a national championship. So they had four Rose Bowl losses that cost them national championships in the 70s. Stanford, USC, UCLA, and USC again on New Year's Day of 80. Yeah, I remember that. Virginia Tech, Tennessee. That was about, 3 years ago? 3 to 4 years ago, played on the racetrack. '2000 Miami beat Florida State 27-24. 2000's another year, Julian, that we could certainly review in our championship reviews. Again, that's unfortunately going to be a situation where, man, I would love to knock out championship race reviews in all these years. 2000's another good one. Somebody mentioned me this week, and requested 1991, 94, 96, 97, all controversial years. But if people don't watch them, then I'm going to stop doing them. Look at that. I wonder who that is. Oregon's left tackle is an absolute beast, yes. Look for him to be a Redskin after the 2021 draft. Already predicting draft order, draft status, 2021, Eli. Yeah, Panay Sewell. Good call. We got the 503 JM on the line. We're at 97 days to college football week 0, if we get there, if we get that regularly scheduled start. McGee, thanks for checking in. Love to know that you're back. John is letting us know that the Gators are way overrated, won't come close to winning the SEC. Well, hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's DeAndre. I had a comment for you.
Sure.
I heard the guy talk about UCLA recruitment.
Yeah.
And the athletic director, I don't act like me and him good friends or anything, but we run together and we play basketball and football together.
Okay.
Marty Jarman. And I think one of the issues with UCLA is just like Georgia Tech. The academic standard there is very high. I know I heard what you said. There's really no excuse because Stanford and Notre Dame perform at a high level. But I think that's what's one of the problems is that both of those schools' academics is off the chart. And, it's kind of hard to keep 88 players and, 110, how many scholarships there is now, and get them there and keep them in school. People always say, you get somebody in school, but can you keep them in school to perform at the academic standard of that school? And I think that's what a lot of people don't look at because being Pitts against Pete, he was like, well, Kyrie Irving went to Duke, and he said the world was flat. Well, Kyrie had to stay a semester at Duke and stay eligible, where college football players got to stay 3 years. And I think that's what maybe be the problem at both of those schools, because my cousin, Vernon Johnson, played at Georgia Tech, and he said he was a criminal justice agent, and they said everybody had to play, everybody had to take campus. Right? What does calculus and criminal justice got to do with each other? And so that's what one of the statements I wanted to make when I heard about what he said about UCLA and Georgia Tech recruiting and why they had difficulties winning. And also I'd like to point out about South Carolina. And I will tell them out there, I brought this up to your attention too. When South Carolina is different from Clemson is, South Carolina recruits the state of South Carolina, which is very small. Clemson does a better job of going to North Carolina, Carolina. If you go look at Clemson best players in history, they never come from the state of South Carolina. A lot of them come from outside the state, outside of William Perry. Most of those guys that were really good in Clemson history came from Georgia, North Carolina, or Florida. Kittle was from here. Jeff Davis is from Jacksonville, North Carolina. And that's why I think where the problem lies at, maybe South Carolina needs to extend their recruiting reach. And another problem I don't think people realize, South Carolina got to recruit against Clemson, but also the North Carolina schools, which include East Carolina. So you have a very small area to get talent from. But that's no excuse for South Carolina. They should be better. But I just wanted to throw that in about UCLA and their academic standards while I had a quick time on break here while I was listening to the show.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Good point. All right, DeAndre. Thanks for chiming in. Appreciate it. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. So our content this week, among others, I'm sure I'm forgetting a lot of content that we posted here in the last week, but we've got national championship replays. Basically, we've broken down the season going back to 1983, 84, and 90. Those three in particular we've already posted, but man, I could go through every season. And basically, it's just a breakdown of, yes, we know that so-and-so won the national championship in, pick your year. 1985, Oklahoma won the national championship. But there was a poll. There were scheduling factors. There are a lot of things to consider that come into play as to why a certain team was voted the national champion and why other teams may have a claim to a national championship, or in the BCS era, why other teams earned the right to play in the BCS championship game and were not selected. The formula plus the votes in the AP and the USA Today did not result in certain teams, Oklahoma State in 2011 being an example, Ohio State in 1998 being an example, Wisconsin in 1998 being an example, Arizona 1998, UCLA 1998. We could keep going with 1998. That right out of the gate, the BCS showed its worth. Wink, wink. It's worth. It's garbage. It's that it's completely invalid as a system right out of the gate. The first year of the BCS, 1998. Tennessee, and Tennessee detractors will join me in this. In all evaluation of the games and how they were played, Tennessee got a bit lucky. More than once, the Arkansas game and the Syracuse game. And when I say a team got lucky, sure, Tennessee was really good and they won the national championship. And credit to them. They didn't cheat their way. There weren't bad calls or anything necessarily like that. But there's a difference when you watch certain games, and we could run through great games throughout history of college football. There's a difference when a team loses a close game and the team that won it, a classic, great game, two really good teams, 35-34 kind of game. There's a difference between the situations in which the team that won it took the game. They put together an 80-yard drive with 2 minutes left to win the game. They had a strip sack that caused a fumble that ended the other team's chances of winning. They made a play. Versus there being many situations in which a team wins a big game and the other team handed it to them. A strip sack is one thing. An interception where the ball's played by the DB and it's played well, tight coverage, great play by the DP. There are other situations, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, you can relate right here, like the 1996 Super Bowl, in which Larry Brown, basically, if you can catch a football, you could be as good as what Larry Brown was able to accomplish in the 96 Super Bowl, Cowboys over the Steelers. Neil O'Donnell made two horrible passes and misreads and threw the ball twice in the fourth quarter to Larry Brown, who was just in open grass. And he won a Super Bowl MVP because of it, because he could basically catch a football in open grass. The ball just came right to him. The Steelers more so lost the game. Credit the Cowboys. They were there to receive the gift. But I don't think there's any question, and nobody can really debate, that in that particular Super Bowl, that game was more lost than it was won. And Tennessee had a few of those games against Arkansas in particular. Clint Sterner just dropping the ball in the middle of the field for Tennessee as Arkansas was running out the clock. And then a bad interference call against Syracuse in week 1 on the road. Point is that Tennessee did go undefeated and play in the national championship game. But the team that they were going to play against, who should that team be? We had, for those of you not around in 1998 or who have not looked it up or listened to me on previous shows or videos, 6 teams were 10-1. 6 Power 5 teams. We're not even counting Tulane undefeated. Ohio State, Wisconsin, Arizona, UCLA, Kansas State, Florida State, all 10-1. All 10 or 11-1. One loss. So those are the kind of situations we're tearing apart here at MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, and posting videos on. I am not discrediting Tennessee's national championship or even Florida State's appearance in the championship game, but I'm basically saying there were 5 teams on the sideline that for really no reason, no legitimate resume or schedule or track record reason, were not selected to go to the BCS championship game. Just Florida State just happened to be selected based on the stupid BCS formula. Ironically, Florida State had the worst loss of all those teams. They lost to a 6-5 North Carolina State team by 17 points. Torrey Holt tore him up, and that Florida State team lost by 17 points to North Carolina State and made the national championship game. And so started the BCS era, and it basically didn't get better after that. What was also disappointing about that season is then Florida State's quarterbacks were hurt, and I can't remember the third stringer's name. They went with their third stringer, what was his name, in the national championship game. Can't think of the kid's name. It's been 22 years. But Florida State wasn't even at full strength playing Tennessee in the national championship game. So again, here we are on a Sunday night. I appreciate everyone for adjusting your schedules. Try to make it on here live at 10 o'clock Eastern Time. Was about a half hour late tonight. We've got 40 on the line. Would like to encourage everyone. Folks, here's the deal. We are building a college football channel here that I would love to be proud of as the best discussion, debate, and analysis anywhere. I'm one individual, so it's not what I want it to be right now, but I have big plans, big dreams, and big vision. So I appreciate everyone out there that joins the vision. One way in which you can contribute without it taking a dime out of your pocket is to just shop Amazon and use the link in the description section of any of the videos. So if you go to any video and you grab the link next to the Amazon phrase, it says Amazon, shop Amazon, use this link, grab that link, keep it somewhere where it's going to be handy, and you can always reference that link, and then you help us build the channel by just, it's the same shopping experience. Same exact shopping experience. Just please use the link to Amazon. Super Chat's on tonight, as DeAndre let us know. We do have a call coming in here as we keep things going.
Call will start at the beep.
Hey, it's MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, it's Rod Fargo. How you doing?
Hey, man, how are you? I'm doing good.
I'm doing good. Hey, thanks for taking my call. Just wanted to call and see what your thoughts on what the best rivalry in football is right now. Obviously, I'm an Ohio State fan, but I'm slowly starting to concede, with how it's been one-sided, that if it's the best rivalry right now in college football. So when you think the next best rivalry outside of Ohio State, Michigan, most people would probably think the Iron Bowl. Well, in my opinion, I don't think that is, because if you ask me, that's kind of a regional rivalry. Because for one, it's kind of become the next biggest game in terms of championship implications, both conference and national implications on their schedule. LSU is the biggest game. I mean, just look at the TV ratings. And then if you look at their schedule coming up, for Alabama this year, it may be the third most watched game on their schedule this year since they played Georgia. So, and if you kind of compare that rivalry compared to the other big-time rivalries in college football, Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, USC, Oklahoma, Texas, Florida State, so on and so on. Those are all national programs. If you look at the Iron Bowl, Auburn is kind of a regional program. So I was just kind of seeing what your thoughts were, like, what's the best rivalry right now? I mean, in my opinion, right now, I think it's Oklahoma, Texas, just because the games have just been the most exciting and the closest. And just wondering what your thoughts were.
Well, it's a great question, because if you're going to make the Ohio State and Michigan argument, it's a historic argument, and it's an argument based on continued interest. Regardless of how lopsided the series is, the interest continues. I have a moment there with my son, who's 23 years old right now. Every year when the game comes on at noon and they go with the big montage, and you know how the rollout is with the big montage and everything at the beginning, about it just kind of cuts through my heart, through my emotions of how amazing this is, regardless of how lame of a rivalry it's been on the field in recent years, that it still just holds the attention of the nation to a certain extent. It still gets phenomenal TV ratings. It's still the first selection of Fox, what used to be ABC, but let's see, since 2017 has been Fox. When they are given their selection for the year, that's the first game they snatch up. Ohio State, Michigan, we'll take it. So the most eyeballs are on the game, and it still holds just a kind of a magical brand in college football. But yes, on the field, then at what point do we need to see a more competitive series? You make a great case about Texas, Oklahoma. Alabama and Auburn, that it's always been my thought that that's the second best rivalry in the nation. But you do make an interesting point about the TV ratings, and that Auburn's not quite an elite. But you could say that they've been better than Texas the last 10 years.
Agreed.
And then there's a difference between the popularity of the game and what the competition is on the field. Oregon State's a rivalry, but the Oregon USC game is going to get better TV ratings.
Right, exactly. It's kind of like I picked the Iron Bowl as the number one rivalry in terms of fans hating each other. and the one rivalry that's a very underrated, it's not maybe quite a college football rivalry, but one underrated national rivalry. Well, not really national, but it's Kentucky and Louisville.
Mhm.
That is a really nasty rivalry because I've experienced that football game twice at both at UK and at Louisville's field.
Sure.
And those fans, and it's it's a pretty good rivalry. So it kind of brings up another question. You know, I mean, do you kind of look at the whole package? Does it need to be both? You know, the intensity of like the hatred between the programs and the fans, and then like in terms of implications on the field. And I mean, that's what kind of kills, you know, Florida State right now, Florida State Miami right now, USC Notre Dame right now, because those were always the most fun games to watch. And I don't want to see that happen to Ohio State Michigan, you know, because I just love that rivalry so much. Don't get me wrong, I loved winning growing up in the 90s, although having my heart broken so many times, and I want to be caught up in the series. I want to take that lead. But however, you know, I don't want to lose that spot of having, you know, the number one most watched game in America. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that it's maintained its fervor in regards to interest is pretty fascinating, considering it's a 15-1 series. I don't know how long it can sustain that. And it already has its detractors. People will jump in and say this isn't a rivalry anymore because they're strictly looking at the competition on the field, but they're not looking at the grand scheme. Obviously, it's a rivalry. It's an amazing rivalry still. Those people that say that have no sense of history and importance and what a rivalry really is. They're just looking at, you know, based on their definition, the Super Bowl's a rivalry because those are the two best teams playing. That's what a rivalry is. That's not a rivalry just because two teams are good and they're playing. And there's nothing else to it. It's all those things you talked about. It's history, it's intensity, it's interest. You know, if nobody cares about it or fewer people care about it than this other rivalry over here, well, that's a factor. And if Ohio State continues to club Michigan over the head every year, but more people watch the game and it still has its ancient history, then it's still a great rivalry. It's not as great as it could be. It could be 1975 when it was at its zenith, or the mid-90s when it was all those things. Plus, it was competitive, and you didn't know who was going to win, and you had upsets and all those things that made it like, okay, well, Ohio State's won 3 in a row, but then Michigan goes on a tear and wins 5 out of 7, and back and forth, and that's just been lost. But yeah, Texas-Oklahoma's been an exciting game, even though Oklahoma's been by far the better team in the conference and dominated the conference. And I'm going to have to let you go in just a second. The games have been exciting. Rarely a blowout. Texas has really stepped up with pretty marginal teams. And the first college football playoff that Oklahoma was a part of, 2015, I should say, Texas was an under 500 team and jumped up and beat them. So
Right.
I'll have to let you go. Thanks so much for the call.
All right, take care. Thanks, Mark.
All right, I'm going to have to step off for just a second. Just talk in the live chat there. Hey. Yeah, sorry. Much apologies right there. Sorry about that. To everyone that's joining us tonight. So there's still a possibility I may need to take a phone call, but tons of comments on the line. Hopefully next week we'll be back in our home studios and we'll have everything pulled together and deliver a nice call-in show on a Sunday night. So Tuesday at 3 o'clock Eastern time, Tuesday afternoon, we're doing a Miami live show. And then Tuesday night at 7 o'clock Eastern time, talking Florida State live. So join us for that. I am going to have started to take notes on team previews. So unfortunately, what I would love to do every time I start something like this, I want to do it. It was like the schedules. Back when I analyzed the schedules, I wanted to do every schedule in the Power 5 and maybe in the country if I had the time to do it and I had the opportunity, but at least all the Power 5 schedules. But I started producing them, and outside of a few teams, not too many people were watching them. So it's just not worth my time. So similar to that, I'll do team previews, and hopefully, I've prepared notes thus far. Maryland, Nebraska, Michigan, Arkansas. A lot of Arkansas fans out there. For as horrible as the Hogs have been, a lot of Arkansas fans are out there. So that's what we prepared thus far, and I'll get those videos out here the next week. Nebraska, Maryland, Michigan, Arkansas team previews. And again, I've got videos released of the top 5 in the SEC and the Big 12 and the Pac-12, top 5 at quarterback and running back. And, of course, we've got our national championship replays from the years of 1983, 84, and 90. Anything else interesting here? I believe I will let everyone go. We don't have any other calls coming in. Thank you so much for joining. I apologize for the issue with the call-in shows in regards to the timing. Most of you know that I've got a job that requires me to work crazy hours, and that's what the deal is. I would love to do this full-time, full throttle all the time, and then you would get so many call-in shows, it would drive you nuts. We would do call-in shows, and we would do live streams in addition to Ohio State, Florida State, Miami. Pick your team. We would do them. Would love to do Michigan, Clemson, LSU, Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas. I would love to do Purdue. I would do a Northwestern live stream every week if we had the time and the resources here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Thank you so much. Any comments or questions that you had in the live chat, please copy and paste and leave those in the comment section of any of the videos, and we will see you next time.